Becky, my old friend. Well, we're not old. Our friendship, it's been a long time. So it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Really thrilled to have you. So everybody, Becky D'Anna, we are going to talk about Alex Garland. I know you're a big fan, but
Yes.
before we do, why don't you tell this group of people, I don't know if it's the same group as other podcasts we've done, but uh, who is Becky? Introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Oh my gosh, who is Becky? Who is Becky?
Who is
Um,
Becky?
Hi. I'm Becky D'Anna. I do movie marketing at Sony Pictures, but I'm not speaking on behalf of them. Really, I'm just a movie fanatic on the side for, gosh, 15 years or 20 years or so. I've been writing top 10 lists, which are now on my movie website, BeckyD'Anna.com. But in my spare time, I like to talk about movies and podcasts about movies. My favorite filmmaker in the world, which is anyone that knows me online, is Ingmar Bergman. I call myself an Ingmar Bergman disciple because he's like my God. But I actually taught a 6-hour Bergman lecture at UC Riverside in California a few years ago. I'm interested in doing another class again. And I talk a lot about, I've been on several podcasts, including yours, Aaron, talking about Bergman. I'm also a massive Albert Brooks fan. So I've been on your show talking about him as well. And I love Star Trek and science fiction. And I'm one of those people that I'm interested in so many different genres. So art house films and big budget films, foreign films, every type of film. So I absolutely love movies and I love talking about them. And in my day job, I market them. So yeah,
That's a great
me.
connection. And that's a great
Yeah.
segue too with the science fiction because, well, that's the thing is your interests are kind of all over the place, but they're
Yes,
very focused.
they're very varied.
You're very targeted in who you. So I wouldn't hear Bergman, Star Trek, T2, but I
Oh
love
my
it. I'm
gosh, we
here
didn't even
for it.
talk about Terminator 2. Yes, so
Yeah.
that's another reason. Terminator 2 is, I forgot. Yes, Terminator 2 is my favorite film of all time. To show you my varied
Mhm.
interest in films, I love all types of films. But yeah, Terminator 2 changed my life. It's the movie that made me fall in love with
It's
movies.
great.
I've never seen
Yeah.
a movie that I think will ever surpass it. It's a masterpiece, and I will fight you to the death if you say otherwise. But it's not a film that's debatable. I think everyone agrees that it's
It's
extraordinary. So.
it's well regarded, but you wouldn't think
Yes.
of like T2 and Winter Light as a double feature,
No,
but
I don't. You wouldn't put them in together as a double feature, no. But Winter Lights in my top 10. So
it's a pretty
yes,
special film, but very
yes,
tonally extremely different. But
and
we are
very
here
different.
today to talk a little bit about Alex Garland, who I'm thrilled that you're such a big fan of his
Yeah.
because so I've been writing this book, which you know about, and I've spent several months writing, and as you know, I'm going kind of auteur by auteur, but also talking about the history. So it's about A24. Obviously, if you're looking at this, you can see A24 New Wave and about how these young filmmakers, kind of got their chances. So I think Garland is really an interesting character figure, um, because he was a writer. I mean, he came into the industry as a writer and
Hmm.
actually achieved a lot of success as a writer. And kind of a little hit and miss, but still the 28 Days Later, I think franchise that stands on its own. But the thing is, A24 took chances with directors, and he is one of them. And what I like about Garland and why I found him so interesting to write about is he really loves to talk about his work. And there's some so I not to bring us down, but we just lost David Lynch.
Hmm.
That's very tough. But he did not like to talk about his work. Some people are just like, hey, audience, you go figure it out.
Yeah.
Whereas Garland, he writes really interesting stories that are think pieces. I think they challenge you, make you think. It's something that you have to unpack after seeing it in the theater, especially one especially of the movies we're about to talk about, but really all of them. Um, but he'll do AMAs and he'll do videos and interviews. He's just all over the place, and he's really proud of what he does. Anyway, I'm thrilled that you want to talk about Alex Garland, and we'll stick because this is not a long show. We'll stick to the A24 films, so that'll
Hmm.
be Ex Machina, huge film for them. Men,
Hmm.
weird film, but and then Civil War. So I'll start with. Do you have a favorite of that group? or if you want to choose Annihilation or Devs, that's fair too.
No, those three are probably my three favorite. I mean, he doesn't not like he has like extensive filmography or anything, but I would say those three are my favorite of all of his films. The A24 films. Ex Machina is my favorite. I would say Men's probably my second, and then third is Civil War. Civil War could surpass Men at some point. It's funny because all three of them. So I write a top 10 list every year. I've been doing it for 20 years. Ex Machina made my favorite film of the year list in 20. Let's see, was it 2015 that it came out? And yeah, it was number one. And then it was then I did a best of the decade list for 2010 to 2019, and it made number 5 on my best of the decade list.
Okay.
Actually, and it was behind 2 A24 films. Number 3 of my best of the decade list was A Ghost Story, which is an A24 film. And number 4 on my best of the decade list was First Reformed. So it was right. So 3 A24 films made my top 5 for my decade list. But then Men was in 22, and it made number 4 on my top 10 list. And Civil War made number 7 on my top 10 list this year. So it's the lowest ranked of my top 10, but all 3 made my top 10. And this was a very strong year, I think. So that's probably why Civil War was a little bit lower. But Alex Garland, I just think I even mentioned when I did my little review of Men. On my top 10 list, I said that he was rapidly becoming one of our greatest living filmmakers. And then I just cemented it with this year when I talked about Civil War, I actually just listed him as one of our greatest living filmmakers. I just think he's exceptionally talented. Yeah.
And he's such a great writer too. And that's what I love about writer directors is they can write their own material and they don't have to worry about somebody else interpreting that material. So obviously Ex Machina, massive film. I don't like it as much as you, but I really, really like it. So
really?
That's a pretty high bar, number 5 of the year. I mean, I think it's an excellent film. I think
under 5 of the decade, you mean? Yeah, because it was number 1 of the year it came out for me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's in the mix. I haven't really done a decade list, but it's definitely and for the purpose of A24, I can't recall. I think it was their first Oscar because it won
for
best
screenplay?
visual effects.
Okay, yeah, and then he was nominated for a screenplay too, but he didn't win.
He was. Now I have to. Amy also won best documentary, so I don't know which award was first in the telecast. I'm not going to research to that degree. It's not that important, but he's in the mix in that first Oscar. And I do remember writing about the Oscar year. But I think that it's actually a huge deal that it won best visual effects for the budget, and he really does make the most out of little budgets, micro budgets. So yeah, as much as we could really dissect Ex Machina, all of these films to the umpteenth degree. I want to ask about Men because what I've found after watching Men and digging into it a little bit. First off, I love it. But I found that it's very divisive.
It's very divisive, yeah.
I haven't figured out why. I love the conceit is that we have one actor playing numerous roles. It's set in basically one location, one town. It kind of reminds me of Sleuth, 1972. Even though I didn't write about that, but I just thought of it. So, but you obviously love Men, the movie. But
I love Men too. Well, not the movie. Yes,
that's not the topic of this podcast, but noted. But what is it about the movie Men? Like I have to qualify that. So given that it's divisive and that a lot, I'm going to compare the Men with the Substance because it goes a little crazy. I think that's why it's divisive. So Becky, why do you love it? I know that's a tough
after
question.
The Substance, maybe people will actually revisit it and be like, what are you talking about? This was not even close to in the same universe as The Substance in regards to the gore factor. I thought Men was breathtaking, and it was absolutely gorgeous cinematography. Jessie Buckley gave a stunning performance.
Yes.
I just think the one thing about Alex Garland throughout these 3 A24 films and just in general that I just love about him, and he does it in this movie, is he is able to just create a sense of dread, unlike at really any other filmmaker currently. I've compared him, and this is a big comparison, and I've done it
Oh,
online twice now, is to Ingmar Bergman. I'm obsessed with Ingmar Bergman. He's my favorite filmmaker, like I said. I feel
mhm.
like there is a direct nod to Bergman in Men. I think I compared him
Yeah.
to just Bergman in general. But one of the nods in specifically with Men is there's a great scene in Hour of the Wolf. I don't know how many of you've
I was
seen
just
Hour of the
thinking
Wolf.
Hour of the Wolf.
It's
Oh, well,
yes,
I've seen them all.
is
Yeah. So,
yes, it's Ingmar Bergman's horror film. But there's a few scenes in Hour of the Wolf where if you just tell somebody what happens,
mhm.
they'll be like, well, how is
Yeah.
that scary? But if you watch them, it's so scary. It's viscerally
Mhm.
scary. So there's a specific scene in Hour of the Wolf, not really giving anything away, where Liv Ullmann and Max von Sydow are in their house, and Liv Ullmann turns to him and said, "There's somebody at the door," and then he's like, "Oh, don't get it," and then all of a sudden you hear the door unlocking,
Yeah.
and that terrified
Oh,
me.
definitely
It
see
still
that.
does, because the fact of like, you're,
Yeah.
oh my god, someone's actually opening the door. And there's a scene in Men where that's happening, where the door's
Mhm.
locked, and then all of a sudden the door's unlocking, and I feel like it's a direct nod, Hour of the Wolf. I don't know if Alex Garland did that on purpose or what, but I saw it right away. It had the same sense of dread. One of the other things about Men is I saw it in the theater opening night.
Mm. Oh,
It was
wow.
sort of earlier in the day, and there was me and two other people in the whole theater. They're like 3 rows up for me. It was a couple. So I was by myself, like rows back. There's a scene where Jessie Buckley hears noises outside, and it's just
Mhm.
very like, it's just the way Alice Garland uses sound, and
Yes.
shadows and things. It is terrifying. And there's a scene
Mhm.
where she goes outside to her doorstep, and I literally my hands were in the air when I was in the theater by myself. And I cannot remember. It's been a long time since I was that scared in a movie theater. And
Huh.
he did that for me. And he does that. One of the things, just to go back, Ex Machina, for instance,
Yeah.
there was a period of Ex Machina which I've never experienced in my whole life in a movie before, which is crazy. That's why I think it's one of the best. It's not only one of the best sci-fi films of that decade. I think it's one of the best sci-fi films of all time. Is there is this character Donald Gleason it gets to have
Mhm.
wins this opportunity to be with our the CEO of his company, hang out with him for the weekend. It's a really award he gets. And as the movie goes, he starts to question himself because he learns about AI and robots. And there's a period
Mhm.
in the movie where he starts to think, am I a robot? Am I real? And
Yeah.
no joke. In the movie, when I was watching it, I actually started questioning my own humanity. I remember in the theater thinking to myself, wait a minute, it's possible. Like, what if your memories and everything you see around you
Yeah.
wasn't real? What if you found out that you were a robot, and and all of a
Mhm.
sudden, like, who you think is around you is just like not real, and it's just programs. And that was like a crazy thing that I actually personally thought while watching the movie, am I real? And I have never in my whole life had a movie had me question my own humanity. And that was just like, that's how much his writing his seeps into all of his films, this sense of dread, the sense of questioning. That's the other thing, is like, Ingmar Bergman also just explores humanity in such a great way, in the human condition.
Mhm.
I think Alex Garland, through science fiction, through these films like Men, helps you like see, like, Men really explores trauma and grief in a really a beautiful like way, but like really scary, terrifying way too. And I think the end, a lot of people can debate the end, but I really do see it as like a masculine thing of like, men just beget men, just beget men.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
and then just, it's like men, and like
Mhm.
just rebirths more men. And then every time that you get, it becomes more messed up. And every time you try to fix themselves, I think it's definitely, it's not a great look for men.
I
But a
know.
lot of
As a
people just
man,
don't want to
I mean,
see
I'm
that.
fine
Oh,
with
it's
it.
sometimes men
I
like, oh, this movie's about trauma. They don't want to think that it's actually
Yeah.
about like being the masculine, and an indictment on being a man. But as a
Mhm.
woman, it had a real effect on me. And I get that it's divisive because it's pretty gross, the ending. But I mean,
Mhm.
let's be honest. Like you said, nowhere in the same universe as The Substance. Jesus, that movie like goes for broke.
Yeah.
So now I think it's pretty tame. But anyway, just as like a through line, these films, he is able through, he's an exceptional writer, and
He
also
is.
how he views the cinematography. Men, just in a general, every frame is gorgeous.
It really
the
is. Yeah.
cinematography, and then the cinematography in Civil War too, and the sense of dread he feels in those films. I cannot think of another filmmaker. He just understands the human condition. He's able to conjure dread. He's able to ask Becky D'Anna, she questioned if she's a robot watching a movie. Like,
if Alex Garland actually watches this podcast or this video, he'll probably be very, very happy. And I'm glad I didn't bring my notes and everything in that chapter. Although I'm going to send you that chapter when it's edited and all that. It's pretty close actually, but he I think he takes delight in kind of tantalizing people and exploring these really weird themes. And if you look at, like, so speaking of science fiction, if you look at his influences, he loves books. Obviously any writer loves books, but he loves those old, nerdy science fiction books. And I don't mean nerdy in a bad way. I mean, just but I want to go back to your touching on Bergman. And I know we don't have all the time in the world, but I really think you are hitting the nail on the head, because in really all of his films, people think of Bergman as an art director, artistic director. And there are very, you're going to contemplate existence. You're probably not going to wonder if you're a robot. That wasn't what Bergman was about. But he did create, even in his like more subtle movies, he was really good with tone and really eliciting an emotion and a reaction. And that's the sense of dread. I mean, depending on the theme, it could be a sense of calm in maybe one of his 50s movies, that sort of thing. But with Garland, I think he's very intentional about piecemealing the story, the plot, with these cinematic elements, the score, of course, the visuals. And then I think Ex Machina is a great example. Men as well is a great example, and also Civil War. But Ex Machina, through Donald Gleason and the scenes with I'm trying to remember the robot, Eva, with those scenes when the power shuts down and it turns to red, and so you have this visual, I guess, reality of what he's going through. That sense of dread, it's in your face, like it's permeating slowly, and then all of a sudden, boom, he is in this world with this AI, and he is trying to make sense of everything. So, and then with Men, I'd say, like, for example, the scene where she's at the church, and you think of this as a peaceful place, a place of solace, and then things just don't feel right. And the further she gets, I'm not going to spoil. I do recommend people watch Men, because I think it is special. But
it's a special movie.
It is scary.
It is scary. It's very, it's scary. And the thing is, I think it's just not like a traditional horror film, but there are some scary films when she thinks there's something around her, and then you see like a vision, you see something in the window and the way the lights. He is able to use sound. He heightens sound. He uses images. He just does little things and dialogue. Like Civil War, that blistering scene where Jesse Plemons says, "What kind of American are you?" Just very silent, and it's just it's so, it's like a bone chilling scene, and he's able to cast the right actors, and use the right tone and the sound and the way actors are blocked. Everything about, he's just a phenomenal, first of all, writer, but director. And that's why I think, and I compared him to Bergman in Civil War more so on the criticism he was getting, because after Civil War was released, a lot of people said that he was, taking as not assigning blame to any party, but just, I wanted to remind people, and I said out a tweet about it, that Ingmar Bergman wrote Shame, and he also was criticized for not assigning blame to any party. But what they both did was they, without glorification, was presenting war is chaos, and it's confusing and devastating, and it's all of that. And he was more like going off on war. But what's also he was criticized for too, which is that people would say, well, why is Texas and California? They would never team up. That doesn't make any sense. And that was and then Alex Garland, because I love the fact that he does interviews. I think it's great.
Yes.
He actually mentioned, he said that it was really powerful because he was saying there is this fascist president that these two people who are so opposed politically would actually team up in a fight against this fascist president who is killing press on site, killing their own citizens, eliminating the term limits, like that these people who are such opposed politically, like Texas, California, would team up in a fight. That's pretty powerful stuff. And I think some people didn't look beyond that. They were just like, that's fiction. That would never happen. But I love that he sometimes articulates, this is where I came from. It is nice too when directors like David Lynch and say it's up to you, and Paul Thomas Anderson does too. But I like how he talks about his work openly. But I wanted to send out a tweet about that movie to remind people that, hey, Ingmar Bergman was also criticized for because it was during the Vietnam War and he didn't, but he wanted to present war as like, this is how visceral war is. So I think he's just such a talented, phenomenal. Like I said, I do really truly believe he's one of our greatest living filmmakers. And I hope he continues to, I love his writing is exceptional, but his directing is also just like a real marvel. And I just think he's such a talent. And I really do hope he continues to do both, but I'm here for all of it. I'm such a stan on Alex Garland.
Same. And I think the Civil War will really pay off on repeat viewings too, because it does have that sense of dread. And the scene you mentioned, I think, is really a culmination. So that's when some things happen and you see some things that you were wondering about. So yeah, again, I'm glad I didn't bring my notes because we would be talking about this for hours. And let's do this again. So he has a new movie coming out, Warfare, which I think it's coming out in May, if I'm not mistaken. I forget. There's a trailer.
Yeah, I think there is a date. I don't know what the date is actually. That movie came out of nowhere. I didn't, because I had done so many interviews of like, oh, I'm not directing, and then all of a sudden. But he's teaming up with Ray Mendoza, who was the military supervisor for Civil War, and they wrote and directed it together. So I think it was just an opportunity of another project that this guy had his own story, and they worked together on it. But it really came a surprise to me because I thought we weren't getting any more Alex Garland directed films, and but I'm here for it. I'm here for whatever you're going to get with Alex Garland, and it
looks like Zero Dark, or not kind of the Hurt Locker Zero Dark 30. So we'll see. But yeah, no, I was literally writing about Alex Garland, and I was like, oh, he might be retired now. Who knows? Good thing I waited, and then all of a sudden, what? There's a trailer. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think,
but I'm here for it too.
Yeah, maybe not directing, but he wanted to go back to just writing, and a lot of people don't know he wrote the book, The Beach, and when he was 28 years old, and it became Danny Boyle turned it into a film a few years later. But he actually wrote that book as he was like a superstar author with The Beach. And he's just like a prodigy in a way too, of just like his writing is amazing. And I mean, the fact that out of the gate his directorial debut was Ex Machina, and I consider it one of the best sci-fi films like in history. I just think everything that at least he does, I can't wait for it. I'm floored by everything. His writing is really, it's just extraordinary.
I hate to say that a debut is mature, but wow. Yeah. Lots we can talk about with Alex Garland. I can't wait for you all to read what I wrote about him in the book, because he's a fascinating guy, and I thank you, Alex Garland, for writing so much and talking so much, because it gives me plenty to mull through. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the new movie, and I might even get to include the new movie in the book. We'll see about the timing. Of course, obviously, I have to get a chance to watch it, and I'm sure he'll do plenty of interviews. But he's not out of the game. I know he's writing 28 years later, and so that'll probably be out.
Yeah, that's Sony Movies, to go see that. It's June 20th, June 2025, and then there's a sequel already on the books for January 16, 26. That's 28 years later, The Bone Temple. He is writing both of those. It's a big deal that he's reteaming with Danny Boyle. I just literally jumped out of my skin when I found out that I would get to work on a movie that he's written, because I never thought that I'd get the chance. So it's very exciting, because I've been, I have a history online of like, and I actually have tweets. I wrote a tweet about Men, and I wrote a tweet about what was it, Civil War, and they both like blew up. I think A24 retweeted me for both, and they like got like, so I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, so there's a history of me before I started working on these other 28 years later movies that I've just absolutely, like I said, love him.
Well, I think we have a reservation. We're going to talk about Warfare and 28 Years Later later this year. So everybody, Becky D'Anna, the wonderfully talented, and Becky, do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on pretty much all this Blue Sky, Twitter at Hollywood Minotaur. That's Hwood Minotaur. You can find me on Letterboxd at Hwood Minotaur as well. And then if you go to my website, BeckyD'Anna.com, it's one word. There's no apostrophe in it, though. You can get to my website. My website has every podcast appearance I've ever been on, has all my top 10 lists. You can see me starting to say that he's rapidly becoming one of our greatest living filmmakers, to the point where I say he is one of our greatest living filmmakers if you follow my top 10. Yeah, so you can go there, and I'm always available. Anything you need. I love talking movies, so yeah, reach out. I and like my website says, it's never too late to discover a great film. So just so you guys know, I mean, most of you have seen a ton of stuff, but don't ever apologize for not seeing a movie yet, because I just feel jealous if it's like your first time seeing some of these great movies. Like, there's so many movies that I haven't got to see yet, and it's just such a delight to be able to see some of these movies for the first time.
Those discoveries. Well, great talking to you, and yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks.